Okay, class, so I welcome you back to another important lecture. And for the last class, we saw that what homeostasis was, and by the homeostasis, which conditions we were required to be keeping them constant within our bodies. So, here for today, we would be talking about one of the major homeostatic control that works in our body, and this is referred to as the thermoregulation, we say. Now we must know that what is the meaning of the term thermoregulation. So this is the maintenance of the internal constant temperature or the core body temperature is what we call this as the thermoregulation, and this would mean that at any cost my body would always try to keep the core body temperature near to 38 degrees centigrade. And here the situation is that why there is need for this thermoregulation, because the temperature has a direct impact on the enzymatic activity. So that is why the thermoregulation or the maintenance of the core body temperature must never be compromised, because if the temperature would go above 38 degrees centigrade, so the enzymes would denature. And if the temperature would go below 38 degrees centigrade, then the enzymatic reactions they would slow down. Now, both of these things we cannot afford. Now, the scenario here is that the regulation of the core body temperature involves the major organ system of our body, and that is the integumentary system. And by the integumentary system, simply we mean the skin that we have. So it is important that we must know about the structure of the skin if we have to clear our concept of the thermoregulation. So the skin actually possesses total of two major layers, and among them we have the epidermis layer, and then below the epidermis we have got the dermis layer with us. Now, if I further tell you that what we have got within the epidermis and the dermis, so you must know that the epidermis being the top layer is further has got total of three sublayers in it. We have got the outer cornified layer in it, we have got the middle granular layer in it, and then there would be this inner Malpighian layer in it. For your course, the further detail of these layers is not required, but since the epidermis has got one of the major role to accomplish, and that is to be preventing the entry of the pathogens in your body. So we would see it in a while. And when we talk about the dermis, so in the dermis, what we have got are the blood vessels. And among the blood vessels, we have the arteries coming. There would be the arterioles, and we would have the venules. Then there would be the presence of the blood capillaries, and then at the end, we would have the veins with us. Moving onward, we would have the hair papillae, or we call them as the hair follicles, and along with that, we would have the hair in them, and there would be the presence of the hair erector muscle. Then there would be coming up of the sebaceous glands. Then we also have the receptors in the dermis. And among the receptors, we have got two. One of that is the thermoreceptors, and the other one is the baroreceptor with us. And at any cost, we must not forget that within the dermis, we have got the sweat gland, there would be the sweat duct, and there would be the coming up of the sweat pore. And we will see now in a while that how come each component that we have got in the dermis that is adapted for the function it has to render in terms of maintaining the core body temperature. But before that, I would like you to be looking on toward the diagram of the skin, because this is frequently being asked in your exam. So if you were to see at the top what I have with me, so this is the epidermis, and in the epidermis you see the outermost layer is the outer cornified layer, the middle one is the middle granular layer, and then at the bottom I have got the inner Malpighian layer. And when I'm going downwards, so here you see we have got a lot of component to be learning about. Now here comes the artery. From the artery there would be the arteriole getting out, and from the arteriole when I come immediately below the epidermis, so here there would be the presence of the mini blood vessels, and these are the blood capillaries. Out of the blood capillaries the venules would emerge out, and then the blood would leave the skin with the help of the veins. Now moving onward, if you were to see this diagram, so here at the base, what I have got is the hair papillae or the hair follicle, and in that there would be the embedding of this hair that I am making it for you. Okay, so this is the hair. Although the hair appears on the outside of the skin, but deep down, this is actually embedded into this hair follicle that I have with me. In close association with this hair, now there would be the presence of these muscles with me, and these muscles, they are the hair erector muscles. And in each of the hair follicle that we have got, there would be opening up of the two glands with us. And these glands that I'm highlighting for you, so they are entitled as the sebaceous glands. The thing doesn't end here. Here in the skin, this kind of the receptor that we would come across, so you have to be naming this as the thermoreceptor. And this receptor that appears to look like this, so this would be the baroreceptor with us. And then you see that the human skin is habitual of producing the sweat when the outside temperature or the external temperature is more, or whenever internal temperature is more. So here we have got these blood vessels, and then they make a knot with the sweat gland. Out of the sweat gland, there would be the emerging of the sweat duct, and the sweat duct would bring the sweat to the top surface of the skin, like here. And here we have got this sweat pore. Out of the sweat pore, the sweat would come out and it would deposit on the top of the epidermis, we say. So this was at the moment the rough diagram. And if I were to show you this knee diagram, so again you could see that here what we have with us is this arteriole present, and out of the arterioles you see that the blood capillaries, they are emerging out. Here we have the sweat gland, there here is this sweat duct, and then here are these at the top are the sweat pores with us. And here you see we have got this hair, and along with the hair we have the presence of this muscle here, and this would be the hair erector muscle. And then you see that this, you could say, layer that we have got at the top, like this is the epidermis with us. And if you were to see, so here these are the receptors with us, or they are simply the endings of the neuron that would be sensitive to the temperature and the touch. And other than that, you see that again, I have shown you like there could be specialized thermoreceptors, and these are the baroreceptors. And another important point is that immediately below the dermis that we have here, so there would be the presence of these tissues with us, and these tissues, they are the adipose tissues, and these adipose tissues, they would store the fats in them, and that would be acting as a natural insulator, we say. And then if we were to further go beyond the adipose tissue, so here there would be the muscle that we have got in on the inner skin. So this is what you have to know in terms of the structure of the skin. So if I were to be telling you the function of each and every component, so if you were to see the first one were the thermoreceptors, so they would detect the temperature. Then there came the baroreceptors, so they would detect the pressure that is exerted on the skin. Now, if we were to talk about the role of the epidermis, so the epidermis, as I have told you above, that it further has got three sublayers in it. But the good thing is that this epidermis has a deposition of the keratin protein, and it would stop the entry of the pathogens. Now, since our skin is exposed to the external environment, so the cells from the epidermis, they would continuously shed, and then later on they would be replaced by the new cells, we say. And moving onward, if we talk about the components that we have in the dermis, so as you see that I have said that there would be the presence of the blood vessels. Now the scenario is that the blood supply to the blood capillaries that we have got in the skin, it would come from the artery, and the artery is dividing here into the arterioles. Then at the top we have got these blood capillaries, and we would get the blood out of the blood capillaries with the help of the venules, and at the end the vein is taking the blood away. But here we have to stop for a while in terms of the arterioles. So what you have to see is that the artery, it would carry the blood into the skin, and this would further divide to form the smaller arteries, and they are referred to as the arterioles, we say. So these arterioles that we have in the skin, they have got further two characteristic properties to be performing. We say is that these arterioles, they have an ability to vasodilate, and these arterioles, they also have an ability to vasoconstrict. When we say that these arterioles, they vasodilate, so their diameter, it would increase, and as a result of that, more blood would flow from these arterioles to the blood capillaries that we have got here. And when more of the blood is coming into these blood capillaries from these arterioles, So more of the heat would be lost through the skin surface by the conduction, convection, and the radiation phenomenons. On the other way around, we have to say the opposite, that when the arterioles that we have here, so when they would vasoconstrict, so their diameter, it would decrease. And when their diameter would decrease, so as a result of that, less blood would flow to the skin surface into the blood capillaries. And when less of the blood is coming in these blood capillaries, so we say that less of the heat would be lost from here by the conduction, convection, and radiation. So this basically means that when my body would try to conserve the heat on the inside of the body, so the arterioles would vasoconstrict. But when my body would try to be making sure that it has to lose a lot of heat, then these arterioles they would vasodilate. Now, moving onward, when we try to be talking about the hair and the hair erector muscle, so you see that I have this hair with me, and these hairs they are in close association with the hair erector muscles. So when these hair erector muscles, when they would contract, so these hairs that we have got, they would be raised. And when these hairs they are getting raised, so as a result of that, more of the air it would get trapped in between the hairs. And when more of the air would be getting trapped in between the hairs, so you see that air is an insulator, so it would be stopping the escape of the heat out of the skin, and this would only happen when we would not want the heat to be lost, but rather than to be conserved on the inside of our body when the external temperature in the environment when this is cold. So these hair erector muscle they would be making our hair raised, and that is equivalent to getting goosebumps. On the other way around, if I were to be causing more of the heat to escape out of my body, then what would happen that the hair erector muscles that are got attached to these hairs, so they would be relaxed. And when they would be relaxed, and as a result of that, the hairs they would fall down. And when the hairs would fall down, so the air would not remain trapped here. And when the air would not remain trapped here, so the heat would escape out of the body and we would be losing a lot of heat. Now, moving onward, we have got this sweat gland with us. And here you see that here we have this sweat gland, and this is making a kind of a cluster with the blood vessels because out of the blood vessels, the water and the ions and the urea and the uric acid would come into the sweat gland, and here we would be making the sweat actually. So out of the sweat gland, the sweat duct, they would take the sweat to the top of the skin with the help of this pore here, and this is the sweat pore with us. Now we have got something to be understanding with respect to the sweat gland that when these sweat glands when they have brought the sweat to the top surface of the skin, so from here the sweat has a lot of water in it, and that water in the sweat would absorb the heat from the skin surface and it would evaporate. So when this would be evaporating, so in return, it would help to be cooling down the body, we say. Now, again, two things happen with the sweat gland that when we would like to be losing a lot of heat from the body, so more sweat is produced and more of the sweat is brought to the skin surface. And as a result, the water in the sweat, when it would be coming on toward the top surface of the skin, so it would absorb the heat from the skin surface to evaporate, and this way the body would be cooled down. On the other way around, when we have the decreased activity of the sweat gland, so less sweat is produced and less of it is brought to the skin surface, and less of the water would evaporate from the skin surface, and in that it would be absorbing less heat from the skin. So in this way, our body will try to be conserving the heat. And you may have noticed that when we are in the summer season, so we produce a lot of sweat because we want more of the heat to be lost from the skin surface. And you may have noticed that in the winter we nearly have got no sweating because in that cold environment we would like to be conserving the heat. So this is how the structures we have got in the skin and how they're adapted to be performing the function. And in the next lecture, we will try to relate that when the core body temperature is increasing or decreasing, then what would happen to these skin structures functionality that would help our body to be regulating the core body temperature. So see you for the next class.